Thank you again for the opportunity to be here and to be speaking, to a topic that I absolutely love and, I've been working on for almost a decade now. Like you rightly introduced, my name is Rita Idehai, and I run a company called EcoBata based in Nigeria. And the work that we do at EcoBata is basically, improving waste collection coverage, resource recovery, and ensuring that waste does not end up on our streets, does not end up in our drainage, but back in factories for productive use. But then, interestingly, the conversation today is sort of on the other side of the work that I do, right? And that's what I'm hoping that, next slide please, that's what I'm hoping that we can get from this conversation. So today I want to speak on zero waste, or the concept of zero waste as a concept that is entirely upgraded from recycling or resource recovery, which is the work that I do. There is, I don't know how familiar we are, but there is something called, the waste hierarchy, right? And so before we get to recycling, there are a number of things. Oh, you can still stay, please stay on the introduction. Before you get to the part where you do recycling, there are still a number of things, right? But the entirety of the waste hierarchy is a concept that we want to eliminate waste in our environment, and then that's the first thing. So I would also talk about how different materials can be addressed in a zero waste system. I would talk about the difference between zero waste concepts, which is basically the idea of no waste at all, versus the recycling-led circular economy concept that we're mostly familiar with. I will maybe skip discussing circular economy in practice and just talk more about, again, zero waste innovations that I'm very familiar with. I would speak about the key challenges and opportunities in implementing zero waste systems, and then highlight how you can participate, because I'm aware that everybody on this call is within the space. I listened to the introduction. So working on textile waste, how can you transition from the recycling-led approach to a zero waste, cradle to cradle led approach? And so we will take questions and answers, and hopefully again at the end of I think 15-20 minutes, you would have something practical to build from. So next slide please. Okay, so again, I also want to apologize, because normally my slides are very graphical, but this particular one is a lot of text. So focus on my voice, not on the screen. Let's do this together. So zero waste is, again, often associated, when you talk about waste management, let's start from there, it's often associated with recycling and waste collection and disposal, but it is more than that. And for us to be able to address the very, very serious issues that we have around climate and environment, right, it is very important that we address the waste management problem from a systems approach, from the very, very beginning of it, not being reactive. And this is where zero waste comes in. So zero waste is the concept that says that, a material or a product at end of life should not remain in the environment. I have many people associate zero waste with recycling and collection. And while these activities are important, zero waste is a system that conserves resources by preventing waste before it is even created. They will tell you that the best managed waste is literally the waste that never existed in the first place. The best managed waste is literally the waste that never existed in the first place. And so it means that zero waste starts from product ideation, product design, before you even get to consumption and reuse system or management system. Zero waste starts from the very beginning. And so when you talk about waste management, the biggest focus are always on collection and recycling and disposal and recovery. Today I am going to be speaking a lot on prevention, resource conservation, climate action, and of course the justice angle to this thing. How can the transition from what we currently are used to, disposal-led waste management, to zero waste-led waste management, how can this transition be just and fair on the different stakeholder groups? So next slide. All right, so again, I'm sure that everybody here is familiar with the different materials. Apologies that textile is not here. It's but it's a material that is also, the volume of textile waste that we're getting now is increasing by the year. But the most popular material in our waste mix, right, are typically plastics, paper, cartons, metals. Electronic waste is also growing a lot, and glass. And organic waste, I think, again, organic waste is in this part of the world, and because, again, of the nature of economy that we have, organic waste is 50 to 60% of our waste. And then the other plastics, paper, all of those other ones share the remaining 40%. So, but let's start with plastics. Normally, plastics are found in packaging, they are found in consumer products, right? And it's because, again, of the very nature of plastic. They are very, very flexible and easy to work with, right? Metals, again, you find them in cars, you find them in appliances. Paper, you find them, like you have office paper, you have books. Electronic waste, you find them everywhere in our homes. Glass, you also find them in like consumer goods, right? So most of the use for these materials are uses that in the current system that we have, the materials will end up as waste. Plastic used in packaging beverage, when you're done taking the water out of the beverage, you will have to throw the bottle away, right? And so in the current system, the best solution that we often come up with is like what I do, which is around ensuring that we collect this waste. But in a zero waste system, we should be thinking about how plastics do not even end up in the environment in the first place. How, there are new innovations now, and I know I'm supposed to get to innovations later, but there are new innovations now that, package beverage in edible plastics or in edible packaging material. So it means that when you're even done drinking your water, done drinking your beverage, or, done using your plates and things like that, those materials do not stay in the environment. They degrade, they can be consumed. So you buy things, and at the end of the day, nothing is left. So there are those solutions already on ground. Same thing with metal. So for metal, because of the very nature of metal, right, it's difficult to design out waste from metal. But again, remember we said in the slide before this, we're talking about prevention but also conservation. So a zero waste approach to metal in cars, for example, could be a system where there is a take back, right? You're done using a car, the metal parts and everything can be taken back and can be remanufactured, right? So that way, you are not able to prevent metal from, being a waste sort of, but you're able to take it back so that it doesn't even end in the environment. So that exists, right? Same thing for paper. Paper at this moment are actually biodegradable, right? Especially if you sort them properly. So and then they don't have to end in the environment. If you look at electronic waste, it might be difficult to design batteries or computers in a way that it doesn't break down. But what happens immediately the consumer or the first consumer is done with those materials, it has broken down. We should have take back systems that put this material back in use, right? So if you look at it again for all of the other material streams, that's what we're talking about when we say zero waste. Away from zero waste, again, to summarize this page, is saying let's be more proactive with ensuring that the products, the end of life of these different materials do not end up on our streets, right? But back in the factory, or even just disappearing in your stomach as food, as edible products. So next slide. Yes, so I think this is probably the most illustrative slide that I have. And again, it's putting side by side the concept of zero waste, cradle to cradle, and recycling-led, circular economy. For some reason, and maybe due to fault of people like myself, we've popularized the concept of recycling as the silver bullet to waste management on the continent. And today I am just here to take a step back and say that that's not true. The best waste, the best managed waste, is the waste that wasn't generated at all. So instead of us prioritizing how do we collect waste effectively, it's something that we should work on. But then again, how about we look at how do we even prevent this waste in the first place? instead of us saying, oh, landfill, let's engineer our landfill, we should do that. But before we do that, and more important to doing that, is how do we engage product designers to design products that, to design products with better end of life management, instead of saying, how do we burn waste? Because again, there are certain waste that you just cannot recycle. How do we refurbish and reuse them? So these are the things. And the ultimate thing is, instead of managing pollution, right, how do we eliminate it? And in this particular part, I don't know if you're familiar, but in Nigeria, how we manage our waste currently contributes about 15%. That's the third largest to our greenhouse gas emission. Maybe because, again, it's not oil and gas sector, you're not burning fossil fuel. Most people do not comprehend or cannot comprehend how much waste management contributes to greenhouse gas emission and the issues around climate, right? And waste management is so interesting because it contributes to the climate problem in the side of releasing greenhouse gas emission, and it also contributes even to the climate problem in the side of reducing our capacity to adapt. Flooding was mentioned now. So normally you wouldn't even know, if you throw just one bottle away, it doesn't occur to you how it contributes to flooding. But imagine in a country like mine that has 200 million people, in a city like Lagos, there are 20 million people. So imagine 20 million people throwing one bottle away. There is a statistics that says that 50 to 60 million sachet water is consumed every day in Lagos. So imagine a case where all of that is just disposed on the drainage, and that's what happens mostly because we don't have prevention systems, we don't have collection systems, in fact. And then when everybody disposes their waste, that's when drainages are blocked. We already have limited drainages. We already have limited capacity of drainages. And then, we are polluting the environment. We are blocking the drainages and worsening our capacity to even adapt to increased rainfall, which is a climate risk. On the other side, when you burn waste, right, which is something that is prominent in traditional waste management system, you're releasing toxins, you're releasing greenhouse gases, you're releasing carbon and black soot, a lot of things into the atmosphere, and so you are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So waste management is such a critical part of the climate conversation that I think that we should be more proactive, and which is why I'm happy that we're having this conversation around zero waste management. So on the other side, I said that credit to credit thinking takes a proactive approach. I've said it already, in designing products and systems from the beginning so that materials continuously circulates without becoming waste. It prioritizes safe materials, it prioritizes biodegradable materials, it prioritizes reuse, repair, refill, and regeneration, as opposed to recycling systems, which is what we already have. On the other side is what the traditional method that prioritizes collection, and now we are trying to layer recycling, waste to energy, and all of those on them. Those are not efficient. The most efficient thing is a cradle to cradle perspective and system, where you think about when you think about products in terms of what material is it made from? Is it biodegradable? Is it safe? Is this reusable? Is this repairable? Is the old system refillable? Just again making sure that waste does not even get into the environment at all. Next slide, please. All right, next slide. I would speak to this later. All right, so it is nice to hear about, zero waste.
Hi, Rita. You have 5 minutes more.
Oh, no problem. I'm almost done. It is nice to hear about waste management, zero waste approach, as opposed to the recycling approach that we're very, very, passionate about. But then again, implementing this has its key challenges. Of course, it also has its opportunities. And some of the biggest challenge that we have is around the fragmented policies that with environments that we work in, right? Also, limitation in capacity, and the fact that there is actually poverty in the land that we don't speak about a lot. So because there is limited knowledge around product design, it's difficult again for us to engineer new materials. So that's like one of the biggest challenges that we have. there are, again, the other challenge is around policies. Most of in Nigeria, where I'm from, for example, there is a lot of waste management is a local government responsibility, but local government don't have the capacity to design policies or even implement policies. So those are some of the challenges that we have. But thankfully, we are seeing global frameworks that work, and our countries are starting to adapt to this. On the other side, for the opportunities, for every problem that there is, you can always reframe it, right, to see opportunities, which is why solutions like mine, which was why I skipped the other time, where we are building collection infrastructures to collect waste directly from source before they get to the environment. Solutions like that exist. Engineering and chemistry related solutions where you literally create new materials. Again, I said that there are people that are making bioplastics now from seaweed. So plastics that you can literally eat these plastics, right? People are making them, and there are new sectors opening up in those places. The repair, the refill system are also new innovative, approaches that people are already looking into. And like I said, policies are beginning to shift. Maybe not from within, because we don't have the capacity within in most cases, but from outside, there is a global push, for circular economy issue related solutions, especially the zero waste model. You would also hear things like nature-based solutions, zero waste, cradle to cradle. So there is a global push for these sort of innovations, and so governments, whether they are struggling or not, are beginning to align, and so there are great opportunities in that area. Please, you can go to the next slide. All right, so I've spoken about policies and the limitations. I've spoken about the opportunities also, and these are some of the areas where, as young people, if you want to participate in the circular economy space, especially from the zero waste angle, these are some of the ways that you can be a part of it. For consumers, right, let's say your households, your friends, they should choose better materials. They should choose to reuse and repair first of all, and again, wherever possible, they should then choose to recycle. But the goal is to avoid waste by choosing biodegradable products or better designed products. They should reuse material, repair material first before we start to think about recycling. Yes. Then for a business or for innovators like yourself, where are the places where you can come in? You can think about redesigning products. You can think about redesigning take-back systems. You can think about redesigning supply chain systems. So I don't know why I'm going to use textile as an example again, but that was what stuck to me. So again, how do our clothes, because now there's a lot of issues around fast fashion, how do we make products that either last longer, or make fashion products that last longer? First of all, how do you create a very scalable repair model so that there is even limited fashion waste in our environments first before we think about how to repurpose the fashion waste? So those are things that businesses can think about. How do you redesign products? How do you create new products, new materials, better materials? How do you think about repair systems, refill systems before we think about recycling systems? I'm not sure we have governments here, but for government, we need to develop better policies and regulations that are practical and easy to deploy. So yes, next slide, and I think that should be the last slide. Okay, so that's the last slide. And it's, for me, a question to you guys. I know it's been very, very short, but I would also like to hear in your Q&A, in your questions to me, in your own community, what is sticking out? What particular, say, material stream, right, is sticking out that that there are better solutions for? You can look at what is happening in other climes. You can also look at what is happening, or what was happening before. But what material do you think that we can easily phase out using a zero waste approach or using zero waste alternatives? So I would be happy to hear that from anybody that has that sort of idea, so that it helps to drive this home for every other person. But yes, it's been a wonderful time having this conversation with you. Final slide is just my thank you page. So I'm happy to take questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rita.